Okay. All right. So in a few seconds, we're going to be streaming live in YouTube with this amazing community and this amazing audience, and we will formally start our webcast on Strengths at Work episode 1. So for now, please feel free to say hi in the chat box. Say hi to the new people who you're meeting. Oh my God, Kay is here. So in a few seconds, we're going to be. Oh, sorry. All right. Kay is here. I can see her in the chat box. All right. So we can officially start. So I am John Baluyot, live from my humble home here in Manila, Philippines. This is Strengths at Work Season 1, recorded on August 17, 2023. So Strengths at Work is a webcast series that focuses on CliftonStrengths and how they manifest in different workplace challenges. Gallup certified coaches will be discussing how various talent themes appear in their mature form in identified leadership and management challenges, but more specifically in Asian cultures. So we want it to be more relatable in Asian cultures. So this is a free webcast, and it's a volunteer effort with the goal of expanding CliftonStrengths knowledge in various Asian communities using Asian contexts so that we can help more people become the best versions of themselves through the wisdom and practices of the Strengths School of Thought. And today's workplace challenge is, how do we exactly manage our weaknesses, right? But first of all, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our live audience today. So you are part of this webcast who are calling from different parts of Asia. So we have some Gallup Strengths coaches. I can see Coach Jejo. I can see Coach K here. I can see also other Gallup certified strengths coaches in the room. We also have some strengths enthusiasts here in the room today. We also have some L&D and OD practitioners. And we also have other people who are just curious about the Strengths School of Thought and how it affects our daily lives. So our best way to communicate with you is through the chat box. So as I've mentioned earlier, we would love to appreciate you in the chat box. So just keep on using it for your comments, for your questions, for your reactions. Be liberal about it because we will be reading most of the responses there so that we can enrich the discussion through the conversations that we will have through the chat box as well. However, note that the thoughts, opinions, and inputs that you will receive today has not, whether it's from the hosts or from the guest speakers or even from the audience, these are not approved or sanctioned or endorsed by Gallup in any way. So our opinions, views, and interpretations of CliftonStrengths are solely our beliefs and the beliefs of the host, speakers, and also the audience. So just to give people a background on CliftonStrengths, because that's going to be our main framework for the rest of the season. So CliftonStrengths is a school of thought that espouses the use of people's talents, natural inclinations, to develop individuals through knowledge skills, so that eventually they can produce consistent results of near perfect performance. So that consistent results of near perfect performance, that's what you call strengths. So this science was originated by Don Clifton, and the research is owned and supported by the research group Gallup. So why are we focusing on strengths? All right, why do we want strengths conversations? Coming from Gallup research, they found out that people who have the opportunity to practice their CliftonStrengths are actually 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. They're also 6 times as likely to strongly agree that they have the chance to do what they do best every day. And they are also 3 times as likely to report to having an excellent quality of life. And this is the reason why we want to share it to as many Asian communities as we can, so that a lot of them would benefit from that school of thought. So maybe from the chat box, just a show of yes and no's. For those people who are familiar with CliftonStrengths, can you please type yes in the chat box or no in the chat box? Oh, Sean is here. Sean, my classmate from batch 15, is calling directly from Singapore. It's so nice to meet you and see you here. All right. Oh, see, so for those people who are saying yes, we're going to elaborate more on the knowledge that you know about CliftonStrengths. For those who are saying no, we are going to try to be more inclusive with our language so that we can describe some of the concepts for you and with you so that you can be on board as well with the knowledge that you are getting here. Just another reminder, so some of you might be watching from Positive Workplaces free webinars. This is very different. We were not going to issue certificates of attendance here because this is a webcast. It's not a free webinar. So we just want to put that right out there so that you know, because you might be requesting for the certificates at the end of the session. All right. So without further ado, I think we can get started. Right now, we already have around 65 people in the Zoom room. And maybe we can check in because we want that as something that we will continuously do in the other episodes of the season. So a check-in is something that we like to do as a way to come together to a space while acknowledging that we all have different contexts and are in different spaces right now. So a check-in is a way to arrive and share something with each other. So let me bring out the check-in prompt. The check-in prompt is, I'd like to ask everyone, and you can put it in the chat box. I would like to invite you to answer the question, what do you appreciate about your work today? Or what did you appreciate recently about work? Can you put that in the chat box? And keep your responses coming. We will read some of it. But before, as I read some of your responses, maybe I'd like to ask my co-host Bernice and our guest coach Sarah. Bernice, would you like to introduce yourself and also share your answer to the check-in prompt? What's one thing that you appreciate about your work today? There you go.
Thanks, John. Hi everyone. Hi, I'm Bernice. I'm currently the operations director of Habi Education Lab. We are a design and research studio, and we make well-designed learning experiences for everyone. I'm very proud to be a part of this pilot episode, and I've been a Gallup CliftonStrengths coach since 2020. I'm also currently completing my master's in special ed. Um, so today, what did I to answer the check-in prompt? What I appreciated, I actually appreciated finishing all my meetings on time. So Thursday is like my coaching day. I meet some members of our team, and and I have a coaching call. And being able to end my meeting on time made me provided enough space to decompress before this pilot episode. Yeah, so I had a peaceful transition from my full-time job to this volunteer effort. Speaking of transitions, I'd like to check in with our guest today. So we've got Coach Sarah Medilo, who is the Chief Advocate of Get Creative Corporation. Coach Sarah, how about you tell us a bit about yourself and what you appreciated about work today?
Mabuhay! That's the Filipino version or greeting for welcome. Thank you, Coach Bernice and Coach John, for inviting me to be the first guest at the Strengths at Work podcast. That's really such an honor. To everyone in the room, my name is Sarah Medilo. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, and apart from my day job, which is as the chief advocate of Get Creative, I'm also the movement integrator of the Strengths Philippines movement. That is the community of about 250 plus Gallup certified strengths coaches who actually took their certifications in the Philippines when they had their ASCC or GGSC. I also come from batch 4, so that's the group that took the certifications on the second year that Gallup Strengths came here in the Philippines. For what I appreciate, I think I'd have to say top hat to the honesty and engaging discussions, as well as the insights that I had today with different people that I spoke with from morning up to around about 3:30. I really love just having authentic discussions with people about work, about the things that we can do to intentionally do good. Coach John, how about you? I'm curious to know what one thing did you appreciate at work today?
Thank you, Coach Sarah. And thank you for thank you for saying yes to being our guest today. So for me, my name is John Baluyot. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Positive Workplaces. And one of the things that I really appreciated today was that I was able to close 2 accounts recently. Actually, just this morning for a strategic planning workshop for 2 different companies. That really excites me a lot because I get to use my strengths both in sales and also in strategic planning at the same time. So yeah, those are the things that I really appreciate. And I think I would also love to acknowledge the other things that people appreciated in the chat box, like Ellen appreciated her team. Samantha appreciated the work in the comfort of their homes and family. David D'Angelo appreciates the culture that they have. Maiko appreciated their colleagues, collaborative team from Mary Joyce. Jonelle appreciates my recent workplace and my boss. They're very kind. It's so nice to be able to read these things in the chat box. So many positive things. Kay Robles appreciating that I'm moving forward with an output that I've been struggling with for a few months. There you go. So just keep the responses coming, and we will now start the conversation. How do we manage our weaknesses? Maybe Coach Bernice, you can lead us to the next part of the discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Yeah, when John and I were conceptualizing this the first episode, we asked ourselves, what's one question that we often get asked the first time we coach, and it's always around weaknesses. So maybe ironically enough, we're talking about strengths coaching. The first thing that comes to mind is weakness. But I think it's natural. It's natural for us to think in opposites. So we think of, when you say cold, you'll think hot. When you think of safety, possibly you think about danger. When you think of good, you're also thinking of bad. And even when I started coaching, or even when I was coached my very first time, I was actually very curious, or what are my weaknesses? And I think that's how we're used to approaching improvement. It's really to go through the path of weakness. Possibly the only way to improve is to fix a weakness. And of course, you would think there's nothing wrong with that, right? I just want to improve something that I know I'm possibly not good at. So um, we really have a natural tendency to focus on our weaknesses. And oftentimes, actually, it's not that energizing. There is that side of you that will always feel, oh, I'm falling short. I'm not doing good enough. And personally, so for those who don't, who are hearing about Clifton Strengths for the first time, I have 5 talent themes where my strengths come from. So you'll see it here. So it's individualization, learner, arranger, responsibility, and achiever. This is unique to me. I'm 1 in 33 million people who have the exact same talent themes in the exact same order. And it's the same for my co-host John and our guest Sarah today. So weaknesses, I'd like to share a story about how my strengths or my talents can be my weakness. So, for example, I have high responsibility. It's my fourth. That naturally makes me take ownership and accountability of what I say I will do. That makes me very, very dependable because I always approach things from responsibility. Even this webcast, I'm approaching from a space of responsibility. And that sounds like it's a great thing to have. You're so dependable, you're so accountable, you're so loyal and committed. And however, it can also be my weakness. So I could possibly take on more than I can handle because of my need to be dependable. Whenever someone asks me of something or whenever I see something, I'll just keep saying yes because I want to be dependable and I know I can be dependable. But it does take me to a place of not being able to keep track of everything, not being able to see the repercussions because in that moment I want to be dependable. It's a need that I have, and it can turn into me, not feeling very energized because what the repercussions are is possibly I don't produce good quality work. And that's a feedback that I have received before, like, oh, this isn't actually so good. And I started to, before the Clifton Strengths, before becoming familiar with Clifton Strengths, I felt like I could not produce good quality work. That was my weakness. I'm
Mm.
just not, I just can't. And I learned through Clifton Strengths that it wasn't actually the ability to produce good quality work that was the weakness, but overcommitting to things, saying yes to almost everything that comes my way because of the need that I personally have. So it's not that I can't produce good quality work. I can produce good quality work. But what I need to do is assess, really put deep thought into the things that I say yes to so that I can provide ample time and attention to what I say I will do. So the impact, of course, of feeling and believing that you can't produce good quality work is I really felt so small. I felt ashamed of my abilities. Oh, I just can't. I come from a space of that I can't do that. I just can't produce. It was all can't. So um I learned that I need to work on that, and that approaching my ability to actually pay attention to what I should be paying attention to, as opposed to saying yes everywhere and overcommitting and overextending myself. The impact of focusing on weaknesses and believing that these are all weaknesses, the things that I need to work on, is very, very strong, and really doesn't put you in a place of strength. So it's really that, like, it really impacts you in a very negative way, and it impacted me in a very negative way. um yeah, so uh engaging with this topic of how do we manage our weaknesses, it will also stem from who we are and what we actually have, what our talents are. Coach Sarah, how about you? What could you share a time where your weaknesses affected your work or affected you, and what did you do about it?
Sure, Coach Bernice. But before I do that, let me just set the stage and let you all know that I am actually leading with my top 5 every day. And my top 5, I'm wearing them as earrings. Thank you, Coach Jejo, for making these strengths earrings for me. So I lead with my top 5, which is ideation, input, connectedness, activator, and achiever. So when I think about, before I actually embraced this life of living under this, living with strengths, I noticed that there was really an ebb and flow to my energies. The energy fluctuations were really like constant, and it happens, and it actually impacts the way that I become present in situations. So let me illustrate that with an example. I'm actually high activator. Activator is my top 4, but it's very high. What does that look like? So when I'm with teams and we're working on things, I'm quick to jump into tasks. And I get motivated when people actually share the enthusiasm that I have. So in teams, I'm often like the cheerleader, and I try to collaborate with people. And a complementing strength, which is my top 1, my ideation, brings all those ideas for creative approaches for us. And then I leverage another strength of mine, which is winning others over, WOO, to inspire and mobilize. So that's how I bring strengths over. But I realize, like you, Coach Bernice, my activator kind of gets on overload, like your responsibility. And in those cases, I'm feeling that when I'm doing many things, I'm starting many things, I'm getting people to, go on a task and just get on it. Don't figure out how you're gonna get the details in. Just get started. That's my thought all the time. Just get started. Things will flow into its pace. I'm realizing also that when I do that and when I take on too many tasks, my energy depletes. It's like, for me, low energy is an indicator of weakness. It impacts many things. It impacts my motivation. It impacts my engagement. I say my presence, even my own presence in conversations. And it's, when I think about it more, it kind of like clashes with my high connectedness. I have connectedness, number 3. And typically I believe that, everything happens for a reason. So it's okay. And that's my relationship building talent, connectedness. But my motivation, I don't want to talk to people, or I don't want to engage. If you're not as excited as me about something, then I'll just shut up. I'll keep my mouth shut and not engage, which is so not me. So I think about how should I respond to these energy drop triggers. And typically what I do is I take a reset pill. So get some fresh air, maybe do some physical exercise, spend some time with my son. I have a 5-year-old that I adore. Gives me a lot of energy. And then when I think about weakness also, it affects a lot my confidence and my assertiveness to do things. So when a weakness comes up, I'm not as ready to face to be in engagements with people. I don't want to and when I think about that, really I'm trying to acknowledge that, hey, weaknesses are really like part of the equation that we have as humans, right? So I try to think about discovering strategies to regain energy and confidence. And what works for me is just being effective, being more strengthening the effectivity of my talents and turning them into strengths. Yeah. So
thank you so much for that, Coach Sarah. I want to also chime in on that. No, but before I do so, I would love to ask the audience a question, which is, what about you? Like, hearing from the insights of Coach Bernice and Coach Sarah, what's the effect of weaknesses on you? Like, for example, whenever you're able to realize that you are at a point of weakness, how does that affect you? Can you please share that in the chat box? And let this be a safe space for you, because all of us here are going to talk about our weaknesses. For example, I can talk about mine. So I relate also with Coach Bernice and Coach Sarah when they started talking about their different talent themes, because sometimes my talent themes could also be the source of my weakness. Actually, oftentimes. I remember a time when some of my teammates, they gave me feedback that I apparently was very intimidating to them. They said that I have a tendency to be too grandstanding about my accomplishments and my output, that sometimes they feel afraid to share their output because my output would probably dwarf theirs or their contribution. And that really affected me, because all this time I thought I was a really good leader. And then I start to receive feedback from some of the members of my team that, John, you're quite intimidating, and we could really see that. We could feel that, and sometimes it affects us when in terms of achieving our goals.
mm-hmm.
So what I did was, I started to contemplate where that was coming from, and as you can see in my top 5, the top 2 there are significance and competition. So significance is the natural inclination to share the impact that a person makes to others. And of course, seeking recognition for that impact, so that that impact can become a source of influence. And I realized that that's what I've been doing. That I've always been trying to share to people that, look, this was what we did, or this is what I did, something like that. And because I love hearing those big things, it starts to intimidate them. It starts to dwarf some of the outputs that they're also making. So we would like to hear from you, the audience. How do your weaknesses, when you see them, how do they affect you? Because for me, it really hit my ego. It really got me demotivated for a certain number of weeks after knowing that apparently that weakness was coming from one of my top 5 talent themes. So yeah. Do you have any insights from the audience? Please feel free to share.
Well, as our audience is responding or possibly finding how these weaknesses have affected them. Maybe actually it's not really common that we think of like, oh, that impacted me. It's just the initial, oh, I feel sad, or oh, I feel bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, there some responses are coming in.
Yeah. So according to Samantha, as much as futuristic helps me to be more prepared about the decisions, At times, I tend to overthink as well. In the end, I procrastinate from all of the overthinking. I totally can relate to this, but because futuristic is my top four, I hear you, Samantha, and it's also a weakness for me. Coach Sarah, Coach Bernice, do you see any responses that you're also able to resonate with from the ones who have shared in the chat box?
So I just want to say, Samantha, yes, I see that every day. That's my eldest daughter, just joining us. She grew up in strengths, so she knows her top five very well. And it's funny how conversations at home become different because we are aware of what these triggers are and where it's coming from.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
can see like I become more curt in communication, because yeah, I can see that weakness is anything that gets in the way of our success. Thank you, baby J. Yeah. I think one of my strengths, according to Kay, is that I'm very principled. Yeah, one of her talent themes
Is
lets
that
her,
Billy?
yeah, possibly. I don't think it's been named, but
Yeah.
maybe. So I always try to move in ways that are aligned with my values. But this becomes a weakness when the beliefs might be unproductive or it's not working to her advantage and helping her empower her to move forward. So thank you everyone for participating in the chat. We'll have more of these like pauses to hear from you so that we can um communicate better uh on our platform. So what I'm seeing though is that we're seeing that our weaknesses really are a misapplication of our talent. If I have a talent in having strong beliefs, a misapplication of it could look like actually believing something that doesn't work for us, that actually hinders us. And as a result, it has a negative impact on us. It stops us from being, from contributing to our teams, to the organizations that we're a part of. Coach Sarah, what do you think about this whole, misapplication of talent? That our weaknesses are actually a misapplication of what we're good at and what our talents are.
Coach Bernice, this like brings to my memory the old Sarah, the younger Sarah, the Sarah in her 20s when I used to work for Apple Computer. And I was the strategic relations manager. We were handling 16 countries. We were a small team. And this was way before I knew about the strength philosophy. I know Gallup has been around for a while, but, I was only introduced to Gallup about maybe 7-8 years ago with a book. But truthfully, thinking about it and reminiscing those times, I recognize how my activator and achiever talents really were on overdrive. Like I was full throttle, really making sure I'm here and there, taking everything that I could work on, just making sure also activators start go do these things, and then my achiever goes in and says, no, you have to finish this, you have to hit that goal. So, and I didn't never realize that these two talents, activator and achiever, I know they're my superhuman talents, but they're also the reason for hospitalizations that I had. I was hospitalized. Every year, I would be hospitalized for at least 2 times.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing was, what I was hospitalized for the most mundane thing, but it's dehydration. I got dehydrated because I was just running and running and running. So what am I trying to convey here? Weaknesses can essentially stem from overusing our talents. So there's an energy decline because of the continuous reliance on, in my case, because my activator and my achiever talents were maximum capacity. So this also makes me think, this is probably my idea. I'm bringing over to the room. I work with I've Coach Chot Reyes is a good friend of mine, and I actually asked him one time to help me just talk to one of my leaders who was just working so hard, and I learned a very important lesson from him. It's about the concept of active recovery and the principle of oscillation. So what does that mean? When you're pushing your talents without variation, so you're just going up and just up, and you're not really oscillating. you're not changing the variety of the energy you're bringing with your talents, that's like your automatic ticket to burnout. So, and he taught me this principle. And, I realized, yes, our talents also, they become weaknesses because we're just running with them. We're using them all the time. On the other hand, weaknesses also can come or can show up when we underuse our talents. So what does that look like? Maybe in a scenario where I'm not engaging my activator or achiever talents, I often feel like I'm detaching from my authentic self. Like, it's not me. It's just a shadow of who Sarah is. And because activator and achiever are natural to me, this is really how I show up in the world. So I get restless without immediate responses when it comes to like my activator. When I'm talking and no one's saying anything, I get really restless. Or I get an impulse to take quick action right away. Activator again. And if I'm not able to use it, my activator and achiever, it's like akin to like having weight, a weight that's hindering my natural acceleration, which of course comes from my achiever. So really, it's like a rock weighing me down when I underutilize my talents, and that becomes a weakness.
That's a very interesting point, Coach Sarah. No? Like when you mentioned that it could either be an overuse of your talents or an underuse of your talents, because people would always assume that whatever is the result of your top 5, that's all good already, right? Like when they see that, my top 5 talent themes are significance, competition, maximizer, futuristic, all of those are automatically translatable into results and automatically translatable into amazing things. But I have one more question for you, Coach Sarah, because this is also another possible source of weakness. Some people say that, what if you do not have a certain talent theme that is related to a certain role that you have? For example, you mentioned, Coach Sarah, that you have achiever. So achiever is the natural inclination to complete, right? To complete things, to make sure that whenever you commit yourself to a certain list, you finish the list. I don't have achiever in my top 10. Does that mean that achievement is my weakness, Coach Sarah? What do you think?
Earlier I was looking through the chat and I saw Coach Baby J, someone from the Strengths Philippines movement, also the community, said, weaknesses are really what gets in the way of our success. So really, to be successful, we just need to be mindful of the talents that we bring. And the talents that we bring, when we think about it, yes, it should lead to this. But like, let's give for as an example. Yes, I have achiever. Do I need to always achieve? Right? Do I need to always achieve, or can I achieve things even if I don't have achiever? Definitely, you can achieve things even if you don't have achiever, because it doesn't mean that just because you don't have that talent, you won't be able to get things done. So if you don't use your talent to get things done, it's in the way of your success. That's a weakness. So it's important also that if you have a talent, if there's a talent that you're obsessing about, that you want to have, and you feel like, because I don't have this, I can't do this. Think about your other talents. Think about your other talents. Number one. Number two, understand what skills do you need, and then look at your talents and leverage on them. So maybe if I don't have achiever, but I actually have responsibility, that can help me get the drive to make sure that this gets done. So you have a goal in mind and you're thinking about what skills, what other talents can I bring to the fold. So, think you really need to self-introspect and think about what obstacles are really hindering your progress, and then think about what talent you can pull to make things happen.
I love what you said, Coach Sarah, about like, do you need achiever to be able to achieve? Not necessarily, because number one, what if the situation doesn't call for achievement? So that means that it's possible that you don't need that natural inclination in the first place. But secondly, is I think we should also distinguish between achievement as a skill and achievement as a talent theme. Because achievement as a talent theme is the natural inclination or the potential to be able to complete things, right? But achievement as a skill can be a mixture of different things. You are able to organize a certain plan in relation to what you want to achieve. You're able to communicate with the right people and influence so that they can help you with your achievement. You're able to utilize your resources well. And all of those are skills. They're not necessarily natural inclinations, right? So I think the main misconception in what you're saying is that people equate talent in CliftonStrengths as an actual strength. So it's the formula to a lot of people is like your natural inclinations equals your strength. But the reality here is that talent is just the potential. Skill is the tool that you are using in order for you to be able to produce results. And strength is the output that creates consistency in those results. So I really would love to share it out there because that's also a little bit of the explanation, I think, why sometimes our strengths can become our talent teams can become a weakness because there is possibly not a corresponding skill that exists in that scenario that will be able to get you to perform a certain way consistently. Does that make sense? So yeah, Coach Bernice, what about you? What do you think?
I do agree. I'm now thinking about my own talent themes and arranger. What is the talent? For example, arranger is the ability to multitask. The metaphor that we use. If you have high arranger, it's like you're a conductor. You've got your strings, you've got your wind instruments, and then you know at what point everyone will come in to produce music. And I'm trying to think about my arranger on this topic of the talents or the potential, and then what is the skill that you're able to do so that you can produce strong output. And I know that my arranger, having the ability to organize multiple resources and maximize productivity, I know I have that. But and I know I need to surround myself with dynamic environments. I can have multiple, or I can be in multiple initiatives, and I actually thrive there. But however, knowing that, again, like the appreciation of the complexity of systems can also lead to confusion. It can also lead to me coming off as changing things just for the sake of changing things, not being able to communicate well. Why am I changing things, or why should we try this now? So when my arranger, which has the potential to organize and create simplicity, is not used as a way to benefit others or to benefit the group, and simplify things, it really comes in as a weakness. Its strength will not be the output. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I love that, Coach Bernice, because I think we're now starting to I hope we're starting to understand better the formula of talent. The formula of strengths, which is talent times the investment on skill and knowledge equals strength, right? Talent is our natural inclination. Skill, the investment would be this investment on skills and relevant knowledge that we need to make to produce results. And then the strength would be the consistent delivery of those results towards near perfect performance. So if people understand the dynamics around those, then the assumptions about whether do you need empathy on your top 10, for example, to be an empathic person, right? Like, for example, that's a common thing for me. Empathy. I was so surprised when I saw my Gallup results. I was like, oh my God, empathy number 29. I felt so insensitive. But when I started asking my friends and my relatives, they were not telling me that I'm not empathic. So apparently there is a difference between empathy as a skill or empathic communication as a skill and empathy as a natural inclination. And I think we're starting to unpack that now. And
Yeah.
I want to ask Coach Sarah about that, because this is now the question, like one of the money questions here. Like, Coach Sarah, how do you suggest we address weakness using the strengths-based framework?
Okay. So before I start that, let me just pause and allow us to revisit, a significant point that we've been just drilling in this conversation. So the essence is this. Our talents can function both as a strength and a weakness. We know that. So when we initially uncover our top 5, so when we get that code, take that assessment, what we're essentially getting when that top 5 is emailed to us is we're actually seeing our raw talents on paper. I say raw because we've never really discovered it yet. It's just a printout, a report for us on paper. The real transformation of talent into strength really relies on the concept of naming, claiming, and aiming. So it's a process that most of us Gallup certified strengths coaches use to really educate and guide our coaches to really get to know what their strengths are. So when the best way to address a weakness is through name, claim, aim. So let me give you an example. Let me just run that process to you first. Naming is understanding the talent's manifestation in your daily life. How does it show up? Yeah, I have ideation. How does that show up? So everyone, in the beginning, I realized my high ideation was just a multitude of ideas. I didn't know how to filter those ideas. They were just ideas that I share with people. So can become like noise. So naming that talent, how does it show up in your life? No judgment, just plainly looking at it. Second, you need to be able to claim. You need to claim your talent. You need to acknowledge that that talent that you see is a reflection of your authentic self. I mentioned to you earlier when I feel like my talent, my themes are becoming a weakness is when I feel like it's not authentically me because I don't get to use it or I don't get to live it or I don't get to claim it. So I really get goosebumps when I'm at that process with a coachee and I'm seeing that person like really lighting up and saying, yes, this is me. You need to be able to go through that process. The third is aim. You need to aim the talent. So to turn your talent into a strength, you need to be able to strategically adjust the talent's intensity for specific situations. And why do I say that? We love our talents. In fact, it's like auto gear for us. We're an automatic gear with it. Sometimes if we're not mindful, we're actually using it a lot. And it may not, may become a weakness and we get tired, or it might be rubbing people the wrong way. So you need to also be able to recognize that you're not the only one with talent. Everyone else has talent. Everyone else has unique talents, and you need to be mindful of how your talents play in this playground of our world and see that these talents actually interact. So when managing a weakness, you really need to be able to name, claim, aim. And then from there, decide what the next step is. The only person that you can control in this world is you. So start with you. And then think about ways to how to bring you, your real you, authentic you, to the world. What do you think, Coach Bernice?
I agree. Full and through and through, I agree definitely. I think especially when you said the only person in the world that you can control is yourself. Name, claim, aim actually follows a very similar pattern of self-awareness. Name it. There is a quote that says, what you name, you give power to. So when you're able to name it, that's your awareness of it. And then you move on to claiming it, accepting that you do have them. What does it look like and try to see what it looks like in your day to day. What does it look like to have high responsibility? What does it look like to have high achiever? And if you don't have your talent themes, what does it look like to be on the go all the time? Because maybe you've heard feedback, positive feedback. You're great. You're always on the go. I love that about you. That could we you might not be able to name it with the Clifton strengths, but you could already name the ability that you have. So once you've already claimed it and you recognize it, you see it, you know that it's yours, you can now start to self-regulate or aim it, right? And start controlling it. And we were talking about achiever earlier. I share that talent theme with Coach Sarah. It's really, we're okay with meeting at 9 p.m. It doesn't bother us. She'll just tell me, I'll put tequila, I'll put my son to sleep, and then let's talk at 9. And I'm like, yeah, sure, fine, no problem. And that's for only maybe a few people. Not a lot of people will smile at that. They're like, what? What is that? But that's the achiever. We need to be able to work at our own pace, and we appreciate working at our own pace. And we need to be aware of like how we aim that achiever. Is this the right time? Maybe 9 is too late. Are we sure on that? And we start to regulate each other. Now let's just move it to tomorrow morning. Let's go to bed. So being aware of our talent themes, that the ability to work hard can be great and productive, but also it might also not work for everyone. So in those respects, what you were saying, I really love the name, claim, aim framework. It's so easy. It's easy to remember. It's easy to put into practice, even in our day to day, whether family or work. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Coach Bernice. Just to also synthesize that a little bit, but what it looks like to me, like how you and Coach Shara are explaining it, is that the name and claim part of the framework of like trying to use that to address weaknesses is we try to accept ourselves first by being aware of what our natural inclinations are and how they appear in our everyday lives, right? So, and then the aim part then becomes, what type of talent themes are we going to use, and where do we spend that on? Like, what experience are we going to spend that on? For example, you're having some struggles leading your team because you feel like they don't like you. For example, that's the straightforward, one of the common problems a lot of leaders are experiencing right now, right? And then if you are aware of your natural inclinations and you know how they appear, some of the actions on the aim part would be, how do you then start to manage those natural inclinations of yours that tend to upset others, that tend to offend others, right? So it becomes some sort of a self-managing type of mechanism in terms of like how you engage others. And that is a skill, right? That is a skill. When you put your specific talent themes in order for you to be able to build skills like that, that eventually translates into the actual strengths, the consistency in the near perfect performance. You become a better leader because you will probably spend more time talking to your people and coaching them, listening to them. And then eventually that becomes a skill that makes you a better leader, right? Makes you a better coach, makes you a better mentor, right? And that eventually translates into strengths. So Coach Sarah, one of the other things that we're curious about is that sometimes we hear people say that strengths-based approach is that belief that you can't fix a weakness, that we can only just be aware of them. What do you think about that?
When I hear that, it makes me remember this formula: talent times investment equals strength. Because really investing on our talents is so important. And I say this because when we're more aware about what talents we bring to situations, what talents we carry, and we're mindful also that we're using those talents in the best way possible for us. It's making us feel good, because you want to make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, weaknesses kind of like when they're creeping in, when these talents become weakness, you feel like your body is moving not in a good way, and you don't feel good about it. And when those signs come in, when you're mindful about them and you don't get to that point wherein it's just total weakness feeling, total like no confidence, that's where you get to. You keep yourself from getting to that level when you're mindful. And then at the same time, what you'll notice also when you're mindful about how your talents is showing up, you'll notice also how people will resonate to you and how important it is that you understand that, hey, my talents, I bring my ideation, I bring my achiever to a room. Not all these talent, not my ideation or achiever might not really work with people who are more deliberative, for example, or more analytical, for example, because they would rather have more conversations, maybe questioning those ideas, maybe even questioning the goal. That can happen. And when you're aware of that for yourself and you know what your reactions are going to be, and you're also listening to the talents that other people bring, there's a better way for us to really be able to have more harmony in terms of just being able to communicate with each other. So at the end of the day, when you have enhanced awareness of other people's needs and your own needs, I go back again to the energy. Watch out for the energy. You want to be able to instill an energized atmosphere, and you'll know that you're on the right track when there's a synergy between how these talents play. And what you'll notice also, this is something that's unique that I realized, when I'm using my talents in the best way to lead me to success, I also see my other talents come into the fold. It's not just one talent, it's two or three. For example, when I use my activator theme and I think about, okay, when I come to a conversation, I will be mindful and be sensitive about how people around me are feeling about me starting something new, I become more engaged in the interactions with each other. So I bring in my connectedness. I remember Coach Pia saying, everything happen. Nothing happens by chance, right? Everything happens for a reason. That's my connectedness talking there. And when I allow myself to feel and be okay with relating to people, Coach John, you were saying earlier, empathy is your 29. Empathy is my 34.
Wow.
So it's so funny, I mean, if you think that Coach Sarah's empathy is 34, she probably doesn't have any friends. Right? Because we're not empathic at all. But again, I think about how I bring my other talents into the fold. My connectedness comes out. It complements my activator. And then also, my connectedness complements my achiever, because now I'm not just thinking I want to tick this off my box, my checkbox, my checklist. Now I'm thinking, hey, I want to tick this box for everyone in the room, and let's do this.
Yeah.
So that's bringing a different presence into the room. It's also bringing a different energy to the room. And I think when we are conscious about investing our talents, we really can turn them into strengths.
Right. So, Coach Sarah, I'm gonna skip a little bit into some of the parts of her script where we wrote now, because
Sure.
we have 6 minutes left. So one thing that I would like to ask, because we're talking about this idea of, is there a possible skill that we can use with some of our talent themes that could help us out, have a strength that can manage our weaknesses regularly? So I would like to ask you that question. Like, I wonder
Sure.
if there's a skill that you
Yeah.
can share, or a technique that you can share to the group so that they can start applying that. Like what's a technique that they can use to manage their weaknesses?
So let me preface it with, everything starts with self-awareness. We knew that with name, claim, aim, right? Self-awareness. And then you invest on your talents. When you invest them, you'll definitely be able to manage weaknesses. My favorite framework, which I actually shared in some of my coaching sessions, as well as some webinars that we did over the last few years for my NGO Teach Peace, Build Peace movement, and also for a project we called Hinga, is a framework called PATH. PATH. So what does that mean? P is for pause. You want to make sure that when you're seeing a weakness, you pause, take a breath, usually I use my connectedness to take a breath and pause, and then maybe calm down my activator. That's me. Because activator oftentimes is my weakness. So P, pause. Take a moment. You hear things louder actually in silence. So pause. Weaknesses often come out, I mentioned, when it shows up as bad feelings or emotions. And then those feelings actually resonate to actual physical feelings. You feel tight, you feel like you can't breathe, or those are signs you should pause. Start a pause, huminga ka, in Tagalog, right? It's important for us to go back to neutral and then assess, where is this coming from. So once you've done that pause, you've allowed yourself to assess where's that coming from. The next is you need to acknowledge it. This is a problem of people, because oftentimes people just say, okay, I'll pause and then I'll go and fix. No, you need to take the step, the A step, acknowledge it. What does that mean? I'm able to acknowledge actually because I have connectedness, and I'm able to accept my feelings because of that. And when I think about my feelings, yes, that's normal. I can feel upset, I can feel sad, I can feel angry, right? Those are okay because humans have feelings and those emotions are normal. So I acknowledge it and I pat myself on the back and say, it's okay. It's okay. Once you've done that, you need to be able to think. Only after you've acknowledged can you think. Think about where's this weakness coming from? What skills do I need? What other talents can I use? Work through the process of trying to understand what you can do about the situation. How you can, technically, this thinking is the strategy of the aiming of the talent, right? Aiming your talents to be strengths. And then lastly, the last step is H, which is help. So when you get to help, oftentimes you have two options. Either you say, okay, I've figured it out. I can pull out this next talent to allow me to be better at performing. Maybe I can pull my achiever to get me through, right? And that's one way, you solving your issue with another talent. Or the second way, you realize, hey, this isn't really something that I have in my bucket, in my strengths bucket. And it's probably one of my lesser themes. And think about, who can you partner with? Who can be your power of two, to be able to get to the finish line, get to the goal. So either you give help or get help. That's path. It's my go-to always, Coach John, when I think about weaknesses. Path.
Yeah. And it's not easy to do this, Coach Sarah, no? Like, the path framework is actually a technique. So the technique means that it requires a certain skill to do it. Like, for example, not everyone knows how to pause. Like, as an activator for me, I don't usually do a lot of pauses. I like going into the next shiny object because that's what activators do, right? So it's skills that you will develop. You will use your talent themes now to see how you can develop skills related to this technique, which is pause, acknowledge, think, and help. So yeah, I think we were able to cover a good number of things today. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Coach Sarah and Coach Bernice, for this session. And I would also like to highlight some of the answered questions that we had today of how do we manage our weaknesses. I think the first thought that we thought about was that sometimes weakness can be overuse or underuse of our talent themes or our natural inclinations. So that means that it's a misapplication. They can come from a misapplication of our talent themes. Second is what we also talked about was the formula of strengths, which is talent times investment on skills and knowledge equals strength. So it's not automatically talent equals strength. We are missing on a really, really big space when we don't talk about what type of skills are we supposed to develop using the talent themes that we were given by the universe. And the third is, I really appreciate the path framework that Coach Sarah shared. So So thank you so much for sharing that, Coach Sarah. So pause, acknowledge, think, and help to be able to help everyone. So I would like to ask the audience now for a very quick checkout prompt, right? So since we checked in at the start, I would like to ask the audience for a very quick checkout prompt, which is simple. So, right, I used to think that, now I think that. So basically, it's a belief type of thing. I used to, for example, in my case, I can start it and then I can pass it to Coach Bernice and then Coach Sarah. So I used to think that weakness cannot come from our talents. I've always been, I thought before, I believe that our talents are really a source of everything that's beautiful. But when I took the course, when I took the Gallup course, I realized that sometimes the misapplication of our natural inclinations really are also the sources of our weaknesses. And that's okay because all of us are individuals who are products of growth. What about you, Coach Bernice?
Thanks, John. For me, I used to think that I needed to avoid weaknesses. But now I think that I need to actually be more aware of them. Yeah. How about you, Coach Sarah?
This conversation really prompted me to think about the fact that I used to think that weaknesses are really your failures. But now I'm like siding to the idea that, hey, your weaknesses can actually be opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, thank you so much, Coach Sarah and Coach Bernice, for this episode one. Like I really learned a lot, and I would like to read some responses in the chat box as well. They're so amazing. Like for example, Ellen said, "I used to think that weakness is such a bad thing. Now that has changed." Right? And Sean from Singapore, he said, "I used to think that I need to focus on my weaknesses to develop myself. Now I think that I need to focus on my strengths to yield better results." That's an amazing perspective. I think a person from Appreciative Inquiry that I read before, they mentioned that no amount of fixating on what's wrong will be able to create the greatness that you will be able to achieve if you focused on what's right. I don't know who said it. I forgot. But it was someone from it was someone from the originators of Appreciative Inquiry. And I think this is what Sean was talking about today. So thank you so much, Sean, for that very, very shrewd way of putting it. So Samantha, hello. Samantha said, "I used to think that strengths compartmentalize us, but now I think strengths intertwine. They're actually applicable in many situations as long as you use them the right way." You have to be a proud mom, Sarah.
Super, super duper.
um,
A lot of
Fiona,
there's a lot of
yeah,
more revelations and ideas coming up here, Coach John. But Coach John, I know we're like nearing towards the end, but I wanted to just make sure because I do have a gift for everyone in the room.
yay!
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
share it.
And I
I'm gonna
wanted to
share
just
it.
make sure I had this opportunity to invite everyone. So
Can
since
you see them?
yes. So I did mention that I'm the movement integrator of Strengths Philippines. Oops. Yeah. You want to start off with this one, Coach?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. The other one?
Yeah, start off with this one.
Okay, let's
Oh, the
start
other
with...
one. Okay,
It's
this
okay.
one.
Yeah. Let's start. Yes. So I'm the movement integrator of Strengths Philippines. And we every year hold an annual Strengths Philippines conference. And for the past 2 years, we've been doing it online via WUVA, but this year is such a treat. We're doing a pre-conference on October 20. That's going to be online on WUVA. And then an actual face-to-face conference on October 27. We will release more information about this. Please follow our page, Strengths Fighter Philippines, so that you can see when we will have the tickets up. We have a great set of speakers coming, both for the online and on-site. And then, Coach John, I'd like to see you at the conference in October. Yes. And then my other gift is this is a first for me. I'm actually running a strengths-based selling webinar on my birthday as a gift to everyone who's who loves strengths and loves strengths in the skill set of selling. Remember, talent plus skill equals strength. So if you want to be a superhero in selling, you need to join this session. I'm offering this free because I'm celebrating my 45th birthday. It's gonna be on September 13. That's my birthday, and 4 to 5 because I'm turning 45. If you want to learn more about the power of authentic conversations and engagements, come join us. Thank you, Coach John, for that airtime.
Thank you so much, Coach Sarah, for this. I mean, this is an amazing gift. I'm pretty sure that I will be sharing this to my team, and I hope they'll be able to squeeze into your Zoom limit as they register into your very amazing strengths-based selling webinar. So yeah, I think without further ado, we can possibly close this. But this is just actually the first episode of Strengths at Work. So the next episode will be on August 31 and it will be live. So our guest speaker would be Coach Val Bagios. And our topic next time is motivating unmotivated teams. So we are experiencing this. Quiet quitting is prevalent in a lot of cultures right now, especially in Asia. So if you want to listen as to how our talents and our strengths can factor in when it comes to motivating and motivated teams, we're also going to talk about some skills there that we can use and hopefully develop as we become better leaders in creating team engagement. So if you also want to hear more updates, this is where you will be able to find us. So we are Strengths at Work. This is our LinkedIn group. So you can also share your thoughts there, your comments. You can share some stuff that you think are strengths related. So we plan to build this really a big Asian community of strengths enthusiasts across different countries. Please scan the QR code and you will be able to get the updates there. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming in, Coach Bernice, Coach Sarah. It was such an honor doing episode 1 with you, and see you in the debrief.
Thank you, Coach John and Coach
Thanks,
Bernice.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thanks for
everyone.
It was really fun learning with you all.
It really was. Thank you so much for joining us in the first episode. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Have a good dinner.